As July begins, the Rotorua District Council is still mulling over the implications of a proposal put forward by members of the local visitor industry. Represented by Brent Marvelly, they were asking for an extra $1.2 million to be made available to boost the promotion of tourism in the district. And the request has been turned down. Not only would the extra funds involve an increase in rates, but also of concern is just how do you evaluate the results from such a boost in spending. In council speak, there is a lack of identifiable outcomes. What has been accepted, though, is the growing disparity between the city's tourism marketing budget and those of some of its chief competitors. City Chief Executive Peter Guerin suggests a new growth strategy plan based on a consultant's report that could provide some marketing solutions with firm outcomes. And best of all, that will only cost $160,000. In July 2003, marketing is also on the mind of another Rotorua business sector, one of the most brand competitive in the city: supermarkets. For years, Big Fresh, with its country lifestyle theme, has been a landmark on Fenton Street. Now, and seemingly overnight, the Big Fresh supermarket has morphed into a Woolworths one, and the colourful barnyard characters are no more. Just down the road, there's more evidence of the fight for the shopper's dollar as Pack and Save joins a growing trend and begins offering on-site discounted fuel sales. The Daily Post speculates that Rotorua motorists may be about to benefit from a petrol price war as some of the city's other independent fuel outlets struggle to compete. Down at the lakefront, there has also been a spot of rebranding going on. In a move that doesn't go down well with the traditionalists, QE Hospital has undergone a name change. The new one, they say, better reflects the institution's new direction as a private health provider, with many of its services now being of a non-hospital variety. The matter of branding, it seems, is on a lot of minds, as a District Council organised workshop wrestles with a range of schemes and solutions for energising the city's tourism sector. Some hope is still being placed on attracting really big events, like the World Mountain Bike Championships, with a bid already in place for the 2005 event. Thoughts are also being directed towards reclaiming a stronger share of a growing domestic market and rejuvenating the Destination Rotorua brand. It will be a fight back against stiff competition.
We don't have the resources to put the millions into it like other towns and cities do, and Wellington at that stage, when we were putting close to $1 million in, they were putting something like $9 million in. Well, we just can't compete with that. They started off at $5 million, and we just can't compete with that. So we had to look at smarter ways of doing things.
Coming just when it's needed, and underscoring the District Council's workshop ruminations of the previous week, the second weekend in July brings a perfect storm of midwinter activity and a carnival atmosphere that has most Rotorua businesses smiling. Even the Daily Post seems to be struggling to keep up with the action as its photographers race around recording a full calendar of weekend events that has the city bursting at the seams with visitors, and all in spite of predictions for wet weather. Monday's Daily Post readers are greeted by this buoyant headline. It's been a great weekend, despite those sceptics who said the Midwinter Festival was doomed to failure. And there's no clearer message than this story. When the ATMs start running out of cash, the place is booming. Quite rightly, Rotorua should be feeling pleased with itself. But the Daily Post has ways of bringing us all back to earth. Starting with this story. Everyone knows the city smells different, but is that unique aroma damaging our health? And if so, how much? Starting with the basis that Rotorua has the world's largest population living continuously in an environment where the air contains increased levels of hydrogen sulfide, the scientists are trying to find a link between these emissions and a higher than expected incidence of asthma, bronchitis and other chronic breathing problems. For most living here, our distinctive smell is a very minor trade-off for the privilege of residing in a fascinating active thermal landscape. In fact, the steam does contain some hidden dangers. Since 1946, 11 people have died in Rotorua after being exposed to high concentrations of hydrogen sulfide. One, a high-profile international visitor as recently as 3 years ago. But according to the Post, there are some other issues to do with the landscape that should be causing concern, like ongoing problems within our forests. For years, forestry workers have been assured that the industry has a rosy future. Recent experiences showing that not to be the case. Now comes the news that over 200 Central Plateau and East Coast forestry jobs have disappeared. Stressed contractors are starting to see that assured future melting away. Some blame a sustained period of low market prices and diminishing overseas demand. But others point to clues apparent at last year's Rotorua Forestry Expo. All around were stands featuring the latest in industry technology. All shiny, all expensive and labour saving. Not only that, much of this machinery is designed to provide a higher level of worker safety in a business that has many elements of personal risk that claim lives every year. In the scheme of things, it's not often that the weekly edition of the Rotorua Review manages to beat the daily produced Post to a story.
Some things we couldn't publish because they became running stories. And our deadlines being once a week and being 2 or 3 days out from the actual issue being distributed made it a bit difficult for us to keep things fresh. We sort of filled in putty between the gaps that they missed out sometimes.
In the middle of July, Phil Campbell finds a gap, quite a big one as it turns out, and scores one of the biggest scoops of his career as what could have been a very minor obituary turns into a national front page story. The reclusive resident of this unremarkable Hillcrest home has just died, but in passing has left behind him a legacy that will see the New Zealand Crippled Children's Society benefit by millions of dollars.
We didn't know much about Lionel Briley until the legacy passed, that he had $6 million. And I remember the day quite vividly. Lyle Thurston, whose interest in the crippled children, the legacy was vested to, came into the office and he said, "I've just been talking to John Keeney about what to do with the $6 million. And John Keeney said to him, who was a retired mayor, "Well, why don't you take it to the Daily Post?" And Lyle said to me, "What do you think?" I said, "Lyle, leave it with me and I'll ensure the Daily Post gets to hear about it eventually." And of course, and I said, "Look, we'll look after it here," because we had access to, even though we were a small concern here. We had our contacts with the wider newspaper group, and I said, I can just about assure you this will appear on the front page of the Dominion Post, or Dominion it was then, and the Rotorua Review on the same day, which is exactly what happened. It became, poor old Lyle was driving from Wellington through the Hawke's Bay, I think, on the day, fielding phone calls from Australia and England about this remarkable legacy that his organisation had received.
Lionel Brierley may have been so retiring that this was the only photograph on record, and his modest living habits had become a local legend. But he had a hidden talent that, over the years of a solitary life, had led him to quietly amass a stock market fortune. It's one of the rare occasions when the Daily Post can only play catch-up.
I did know his name and associate it with the Rotorua Area Electricity Authority, but not as a person. He was a very low-profile person, but we learnt a lot about him after his death. He'd been a very parsimonious person in his own life. He'd never married. He was the type of person that would recycle his tea bags, yet he had great investments, and it was this that brought in his riches, that he never touched himself, but really was the personification of a benefactor, because he passed it all on to an organisation that had helped him when he was young, who flew below the radar, but somehow managed to make very wise investments, not for the benefit of himself, but for the benefit of others.
There is something enormously attractive about talented young people displaying a high degree of musical talent. For years, the Lockwood Aria has encouraged and supported those with among the finest voices in the country. In the third weekend of July, the Convention Centre is hosting another feast for serious music lovers. The annual Unison Concerto competition is not only a showcase of outstanding musical ability, but also brings that inescapable whiff of tension to the air that only a top-level contest can provide. Fresh tension is also being generated by this headline as the District Council moves to counter claims that the land treatment of sewage is not working as well as was once thought. Back in the 1990s, the spraying of effluent in the Whakarewarewa forest was hailed as an innovative and effective solution to the problem of lake water pollution. Now fresh research is showing that the capacity for the substrata to absorb damaging phosphorus and nitrogen is limited, and now it's become saturated and leaching back into the Puarenga stream. A $500,000 upgrade of Rotorua's treatment plant is expected to improve the situation and has already begun. But the perception that the whole lake water quality issue is not being handled with enough urgency remains, and is reinforced by a TVNZ current affairs item on the state of Rotorua's lakes. Government opposition member Nick Smith and some Lake Rotoiti residents point the finger at inaction, leaving Mayor Hall and local MP Steve Chadwick with the difficult job of damage control, and Lake Rotoiti's reputation as a beauty spot in tatters. There is one gleam of light, however. There may be some political point scoring going on, but at least central government is now closer to acknowledging that the lakes have a problem, and it's serious. Also apparently serious are concerns about the future of one of the city's most fondly regarded holiday attractions. 3 generations of young children and their parents have been entranced by the miniature steam train at Kurau Park's Toot and Whistle. Now retired, John Smale developed the business more than 40 years ago.
I've always had a love of steam engines, and that means any sort of steam engine, whether it's a boat engine or a mill engine or a locomotive. But I caught a hold of the parts of Toot and Whistle from a deceased estate, and I went on and built the loco, and I built the carriages, and then I had to have somewhere for it to run and that sort of thing. So I negotiated with the council to put it in Kurau Park. And we actually started it running on Labour Weekend 1960. There were a lot of critics. Some thought we never made anything at all. Some thought we made a fortune. But in actual fact, it was quite a good living. And I only worked about 152 days a year, including gardening.
The Toot and Whistle operation has passed through quite a few hands since John Smale's time, with the tiny train remaining a firm favourite for those with young children. But as the current lease expired at the end of June, and with the RDC considering its options for further development of Kurau Park, the end of the line may be in sight. Matters are not helped by sporadic thermal outbursts in the area, and the requirements of health and safety regulations undreamt of back in the 1960s when John Smale created his entrepreneurial masterstroke. While the future of one of Rotorua's businesses hangs in the balance, at the very end of July comes a couple of pleasing stories of successful local enterprise. Kilwells have long had an enviable reputation here and internationally for the manufacture of top quality fishing rods. Along the way they've also mastered the use of strong but lightweight materials like carbon fibre. Now Kilwell have been asked to come to Hollywood's rescue and solve a serious problem for the producers of the highly successful Star Wars movies.
We're filming Wars, one of the Star films in Sydney, and they were having trouble with their lightsabers bending and breaking, and they tried all sorts of fancy alloys, aluminium, and couldn't get around it, and they wondered whether a composite fiberglass tube would do the job, and so we took it on, and it was very successful.
Over those two movies we made 400 lightsabers, so yeah, definitely a lot being used, because they were actually using it in combat, so they were, you know, hitting each other with these, and merchandising. They would have been making them up with aluminium pelts and actually selling them.
What Kilwell hadn't foreseen was the activities of the many fan clubs that arose as a whole cult developed around the Star Wars genre. As a consequence, Kilwell now has a small but profitable niche market about as far away from the pastime of fishing that you could imagine. In the world of science fiction. The term out of this world could also be applied to the flavour of Patrick Lamb's pies, and that's official. Beating off the work of 180 competing bakers, Pat has just been awarded the title of the country's supreme pie maker, together with medals for his steak mince and cheese and lamb curry pies, and a nice cash prize as well. As a consequence, business has just got even busier at Pat Lamb's two Rotorua bakeries, and as usual early morning start may have to be put forward even earlier as a price of success.